What good is that going to do? I just don't understand that. But I didn't understand a lot of the things he did in his career.
Stephen A., what do you make of Fouts' comments?
I think he should be ashamed of himself. But having said that, let me be very, very careful moving forward by reminding everybody that Dan Fouts is somebody I have profound respect for. What he was as a quarterback, what San Diego through the Air Coryell era was, I greatly respect and appreciated with him, Charlie Joyner, Chuck Muncie, Kellen Winslow Sr., Dan Fouts, and that offense in San Diego was incredibly, incredibly special. And I always regretted the fact that they lost in that AFC Championship game at Cincinnati, because I believe had the game been in San Diego instead of Cincinnati's Kenny Anderson team in an ice bowl, for crying out loud, because that's how cold it was, Max. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that San Diego would have been in that Super Bowl instead of Cincinnati. Having said all of that, Dan Fouts has been around long enough. In 14 years in his NFL career, he went to the playoffs 4 times. Now, he played for San Diego throughout his entire career, but he's seen players come and go from various different teams. He's heard reports about individuals that ultimately ended up in the Hall of Fame that didn't have the greatest reputations. But I assure you that when Dan Fouts was playing, Dan Fouts would have been one of those individuals that emphatically stated your performance matters. How you perform on the field of play matters. If the Hall of Fame was about being liked, then a lot of dudes would not be in there. And to look at T.O. with 15,934 receiving yards, 153 TDs in 15 NFL seasons, 1,078 receptions, ranking top 6 in a multitude of categories for wide receivers all time. When he was on the field, he was a difference maker. And Dan Fouts, being a quarterback, should know that better than anybody. So to sit up there and to say, it's one thing if he would have said, we didn't like his reputation. That's not good. But we can't deny what he did. But to not say that, or to say that and use that as an excuse to justify omitting somebody whose qualifications are clearly worthy of Hall of Fame induction based on off-the-field behavior, I think Dan Fouts should be ashamed of himself for making that statement. I really do.
Well, first of all, Deion Sanders played for 3 teams. I mean, you go to other sports, but to make it, Carlos Beltran moved around to a lot of teams. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves it. He was a well-liked teammate.
They won titles,
Deion Sanders moved around. Yeah, okay, Deion Sanders moved around teams. Not T.O.'s fault he didn't win titles. I mean, he was the best player on the field in that Super Bowl, and they were playing the Patriots, and he was the best player on the field, either team that day, on one leg, incidentally, for which he was called selfish leading up to the game that he wanted to play on one leg. T.O.'s got this right. He said, look, I got a slap on the wrist last year because it was my first year of eligibility. Get it. You're not a first ballot Hall of Famer because you were considered a distraction in the locker room. Okay, this isn't first ballot anymore. And for Fouts not only to say on and off the field, on the field he balled. What is Fouts talking about? Off the field, did he get arrested? Did he get improv? Was he in trouble? Did he show up out of shape and unprepared? No. What are you talking about? Because you rub some people the wrong way in the locker room? Because you're wondering why everyone can't ball like you? And then for Fouts to say, so he's wrong there, in my opinion, and then for Fouts to say, and then taking shots at the Hall of Fame, you're not doing yourself any favors, essentially. If there's an implicit admission there that by taking a shot at the institution, it's going to encourage the voters to not vote for him, whichever voters feel that way should recuse themselves from the vote. What has that got to do with T.O. the player? I don't understand that at all. So if Fouts is taking the temperature of the room, speaking for himself and maybe for others, at least the way he's interpreting it, that people think that T.O.'s, locker room issues with some guys disqualifies him from the Hall of Fame, that is simply wrong-headed, as I've said all along. There are hard decisions for the Hall of Fame. There are borderline cases, guys who shouldn't be in, barely in, etc., maybe eventually. That ain't T.O. This is a no-brainer. It's an easy one. T.O. is a Hall of Famer by the eyeball test, by the numbers, by common sense. He should be in the Hall of Fame, period.
Max, I think we have to go a little bit deeper, though, because when you think about Dan Fouts, you were a quarterback. That means you know what the position requires, and you know what other positions require. You also have been in the locker room for 14 years. You were there in San Diego for 14 years. You know what troubles this is. You also saw Ryan Leaf and how detrimental he was to his own growth and maturation when he was the second overall pick behind Peyton Manning, and how disastrous his career and his life turned out before he turned things around. He's getting himself better. We saw him in Super Bowl week last week. We wish him nothing but the best. I'm simply saying that to say you understand all the nuances. And one of the things that T.O. has never been given credit enough for, we saw him on reality TV and other places where his emotions came out, and he was very, very revealing. So we discovered an individual that had problems at home, that was never acknowledged and recognized by his father, that had a lot of demons that he had to overcome because they were inflicted upon him as a child. We live in a society where we find reasons to absolve folks from culpability in terms of their actions because of things that may have affected their life time and time again. We're looking at the NFL now on a macro level from a business perspective, Max, where, okay, you had previous regimes that paid no attention to the concussion issues. So what the NFL is doing right now, they're trying to address it with the level of sensitivity it deserves. So we understand that with all of these other things, but we can't understand that with T.O. when he has the numbers that show that despite what bedeviled him and what plagued him, he was still able to go out there and perform at a Hall of Fame level. And you can't give him that love? I don't understand it. I really don't.
We're all on the same page, unanimous with this one. Rumor on the street, there's some drama going on in your city, fellas. The big news of the night was Charles Oakley's outburst at the Knicks game with tension at an all-time high at MSG. Where did the Knicks go from here? We're going to spin it forward. Don't miss that discussion coming up.
You inherit lots of traits from your family.
You got me. That was 3 years ago. Anything changed? I trust the process.
Play the game, Mello. It's pretty clear where Carmelo Anthony stands when it comes to trusting Phil Jackson. And Spike Lee was asked by our Steve Zang whether Mello or Phil should go, and he didn't hold back with his answer. Spike saying, "I'll pack his bags for him." The reporter followed with, "Would you do a Kevin Love for Carmelo deal right now?" Spike responding, "I think I still believe in Carmelo, but Phil Jackson is making it very difficult for him." Stephen A., the Knicks should count their lucky stars that they play in one of the greatest cities in the world. But beyond that, how are they going to attract free agents? Because this is such a mess and it keeps getting worse.
Simple. They're not going to attract them. And sorry to be so obvious. I've got to give my own self a plug, because Spike Lee was on my radio show yesterday. He did call in. There is sound on ESPN where
Stephen A.,
he's
I'm sorry,
actually on the show. You know what I'm saying? What's
Stephen
up,
A.,
Max?
you had Spike Lee? You had Spike Lee on the radio, on the Stephen A. Smith show yesterday?
He called in yesterday on his own to complain about Phil.
So today you have Charles Oakley. Today Charles Oakley is scheduled to be on, right? But you never know who might call in.
You never know. You never know. I'm just saying. Sorry I had to do it, but hell with it. I did it. Now here's the deal.
Sometimes if you don't toot your own horn, there's no music. Go ahead.
I'm just trying to give the people what they want. Here's the deal. Phil Jackson, this is what I love about this subject, because it gets to the heart of what I am trying to say. I want to emphasize this, Max Kellerman. I never questioned, nor would I ever question, the basketball acumen and downright brilliance of a Phil Jackson, the coach. I understood as an 11-time champion he has cachet. What I have repeatedly stated to everybody is this. If you went to Isaiah Thomas or Steve Mills or Ernie Grunfeld or Glenn Grunwald, the list goes on, Donnie Walsh, and you said to them, you know what? Rebuild the program. Take as much time as you need. Get it together for us. Who wouldn't succeed at that job? They all had a window of opportunity, a small window, whether it was Isaiah, whether it was Donnie, whether it was Glenn Grunwald, the list goes on. They all had a smaller window than Phil has been given. I'm looking at Phil Jackson, and I'm saying this. At the end of the day, since the average president of basketball operations ain't getting paid more than $2 million per year in the NBA, and you're getting 12, what is it that you're bringing? You know what he was supposed to bring, Max? Name cachet that could ultimately lend itself towards marquee individuals choosing to come and play for you. And if they didn't choose to come and play for you, at least entertain you enough in the process where the local fan base could recognize that you're actually a player in the consideration pool of these marquee athletes looking to relocate. They wouldn't even sit down with this man. They wouldn't even have dinner with this man because they're not enamored with Phil Jackson. And that was before he sat up there and railroaded Carmelo Anthony and threw him under the bus and did what Spike Lee came on ESPN radio yesterday and called a flat-out punk move. He said that's what they call it in Brooklyn, a punk move. Well, guess what, Spike Lee? That's what they call it in Queens, too, okay? That's what the deal is. This is what we're talking about here. So in the end, what it comes down to is this. It's about Phil. And the New York Knicks appeared so dysfunctional, it was bad enough. But now, believe it or not, Phil Jackson actually has made it worse. And Max, did you know he actually had, everybody wants to talk about Isaiah Thomas, even though Isaiah Thomas had an eye for talent that nobody gives him credit for. Did you know that Phil Jackson has a worse record as an executive with the Knicks than Isaiah Thomas? It's true.
Impressive.
It's true.
Look, Phil's got to go. It's enough. Phil's got to go. And, in fact, I'm even coming around on keeping Carmelo just to spite the Knicks. You know, the city is rallying around not only Charles Oakley, but Carmelo Anthony right now because he doesn't want to take this BS. And I like the fact that he's digging in his heels about now not being traded because of the way he's being treated. That's exactly what he should do. And if you think about a nucleus of Porzingis and Carmelo, it's not ideal at the moment. Porzingis isn't in his prime yet. Carmelo's a little past it. Carmelo's ISO score, et cetera. But you can't make that work with some other players. Here's the problem with the Knicks. The question is, how do they attract free agents? And you're right, they can't, not with Phil Jackson there. So what winds up happening, even if they do move Carmelo Anthony and they let Derrick Rose walk and they create cap space, even with a stupid Noah contract, and Courtney Lee's not paid a ton, but 4 years he's going to wind up declining throughout the contract. Still, they'll have some cap room. They're not going to get any free agents actually worth the max money. So what winds up happening to us, this usually happens with small market franchises that are no good. They're not considered in desirable places to live for NBA superstars, and the team isn't that good. So they never can sign the max free agent who's actually worth the max contract. They wind up giving a max contract to someone who's not good enough to deserve it, but someone's going to give it to him, might as well be you, and that's your best player. That's the kind of move the Knicks are relegated to. It's the reason they had to trade for Derrick Rose, who's a shadow of his former self, and still even can contemplate giving him max money, which hopefully they won't do. That's the reason, because the top-level free agents who are worth the money won't even look in the Knicks' direction, not even for the money. That's a problem. And Stephen A. Smith, this predates Phil Jackson, and it predates Isaiah Thomas. This is a James Dolan issue. His father, Chuck Dolan, tough guy, built up, good business guy, built up his entire business empire. Basically, James Dolan inherited it from his rich daddy, born on third base, thought he hit a triple in the greatest city in the world, the most basketball obsessed, with an incredibly valuable franchise. Decades ago, it was like, okay, kid, can you make this thing work as well as, say, the franchises in Oklahoma City or Phoenix or a place like that? Here, do it. Everyone's willing to pay top dollar, the whole thing. And his answer clearly through his behavior is, no, I can't do it. I can't even be as good as little market teams without our resources. I'm terrible.
Max, it's really very simple. Since 2001, when Jeff Van Gundy departed, the New York Knicks record is 509 and 740. They are 231 games under 500. They have 4 playoff appearances, which is the second fewest in the entire NBA, and they have 7 playoff wins. 7, mind you, 4 playoff wins is 1 series. 1 playoff series. They have a grand total of 7 playoff wins in the last 16 years, which is the fewest of any NBA franchise. This is the National Basketball Association. This is the #1 media market in America. and you have the fewest playoff wins, the second fewest playoff appearances, and you are 231 games under 500 since 2001. I don't know what better explains the alarming ineptitude of the Knicks, other than the fact that it almost gets to the point where you wonder whether they're doing it on purpose. That's how bad it is. You're kind of wondering whether they're doing it on purpose.
Well,
and I say that jokingly, but damn. I mean, damn.
They're not incentivized to do anything else as long as the fans keep paying and keep watching. Why would they do anything else? The bottom line is the same, and it started, by the way, Stephen A., not just with them not selling now, which everyone would love Dolan to do, but when Pat Riley was coach, he wanted a little piece of the team. The Knicks wouldn't give it to him. The Heat would. And look at the fortunes of those two franchises since then.
Hold on. You can't go there. Here's why. Under the stewardship of Charles Dolan, James Daddy, in concert with Dave Checketts, with Ernie Grunfeld as the GM, even though it was wrong, they kind of did Pat Riley wrong because they made promises they didn't keep. They were still a very formidable organization, winning games, give credit where credit's due. Plus, the Knicks went to 2 NBA Finals. They went to 94 with Pat Riley. They went in 99 with Jeff Van Gundy. The other thing that you have to remember also is this. When we look at the New York Knicks, let's stop short of talking about the fans. You know, in the past, I felt that way. But I'm not going to go there this time because this is the reality. James Dolan went out and hired Phil Jackson. This ain't about how people should boycott the Knicks. This is about that's going too far because you got a guy in there. Phil's just not doing a job. This is not, even though Dolan could be better, the bottom line, he went out and hired Phil. Phil, this is on Phil. This is not on the Knicks. So I'm not going to do that to the Knicks. I'm not going to do that.
This is on Phil. You're right. This is on Phil.
The Knicks are a hot mess. You know what else is a hot mess in some people's opinion? The Hall of Fame voting. But not everyone feels that way. Should we talk a little football when we come back? I think so. While many think Terrell Owens deserves a spot in Canton, there is at least one person who believes it is the right move to deny him a hall pass. Don't miss his words and the guys reacting. Plus, how will Charles Oakley's outburst impact the Knicks moving forward? Max and Stephen A. look into the crystal ball.